it is that you need it to do. So there you go. I thought it might be helpful. So anyway, let's wait for Fernanda maybe a couple more minutes, and then we can get started with what I have planned for today. In the meantime, any questions, any comments?
Have you seen my comments?
I saw the messages. That's all right. That's okay. Don't take it easy. If there were 50 of you, it would be different. Given that there's 3 of you, I can, look at things and we can come and go several times. Don't worry. Hi, Fernanda. How are you?
Is it on?
It's on. It's on. We're on. Hello.
Oh, okay,
Can you hear
okay.
us?
No, because it was still loading. So I was going.
We could see you. We could see
Okay,
you.
well,
That's
I could not.
important to know because we can see you before you can see us. So,
That's one thing.
we should all be aware of that when we turn our cameras on. That's why I always go into meetings with the camera off and the sound off, because I'm always concerned that people are going to see me before I see them, and I don't want to be doing anything I shouldn't be doing. No, I mean, yesterday I was looking at some things, and there were some things that needed some adjustment, and so I'm just testing out the return capacity that Classroom has. So I return it, and you can resubmit it, and that's fine, no problem. I haven't found a way. And this is surprising. Well, it is and it isn't. It's interesting to note that Classroom doesn't have a setup where you can do group submissions. I mean, like you're doing for the portfolio, one has to submit and the others don't, and then you get the blank. And I can see that, but it should be able, because in this case it's easy. But if you have a large group of people, and you should be able to do group submissions, but it says a lot about the philosophy of teaching and learning underlying things like Classroom, right? Work is individual; it's assessed individually, and group work is not a thing. No, it's not that it's not valued. It's not a thing, right? So, you can't do it.
No, you know what I was thinking? Actually, all the material is in one folder that the 3 of us share.
Right.
So we could have sent you the folder right away.
Okay. No, but don't worry.
We worked as a group. Everything was together, but still.
But each thing has advantages and disadvantages, because if you send it to me as a folder, or you give me access to the folder, then there's no correlate with the Classroom. And in the Classroom, I can see everything. So it's got advantages and disadvantages. And, these things will improve and have different uses and different applications. It's often used for something that it's not really what it was planned for, but it does give us a kind of bird's eye view of how these things are designed in relation to the different contexts where they're used. I think you had my son explaining to you how he was tested in the States. Was it this group that I had him tell you? And he used to have, every week he would have tests. And, we think of that as outrageous, but that is what people in other parts of the world grow up with. So this constant checking and this constant collection of statistical data on the performance of students is partly what Classroom does. Right. So you can use it for that, and because it comes from that philosophy. So that's why it's there, really. Not necessarily for the users we put it to, but for the users that the people who designed it have in mind. And also, of course, the fact that these things are designed by technical people and not necessarily teachers or people involved in education. And so, they're more concerned with how it should look on the page than with other things. But anyway. Okay, well, what I thought of we could focus on today is a topic that I'm sure you're familiar with, broadly speaking, which is that of digital literacy, um, as a broad subject. I suppose you've touched on digital literacy in some other subjects, and you've mentioned it, and you have ideas about it or views about it. What can you tell me? What is digital literacy? Or you can tell me you don't have any experience of it, and we can go from another place.
Well, you can operate. I mean, for example, even though I started using internet in 1997, I'm not digital. I don't have this digital literacy, but I can handle it. I mean, now
Okay.
babies, I think they are born with it.
Yeah.
Practically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I've seen it. I don't remember the concept, but I know that we are in kind of a middle.
Okay. What you wanted to say was that you're not digitally literate.
That's
Digital literacy is an adjective plus a noun, and you want to turn it into an adverb plus an adjective, right?
So today is not my day. I mean, I generally have problems, but I told the girls in the morning because we were talking about other things, and I've been all like they like but no.
But it's interesting because what you say helps us figure out how these expressions come up, right? This morning I was talking about a hole in the wall, actually, which is another meaning that I didn't mention the other day today in my class, right? Because I saw a TV. I'm going to diverge a little bit. I saw a TV program yesterday about del vino. I don't know if you've heard about this. Very important. This is in Florence. You're seeing, right, what it is? It's literally a hole in the wall. Let me show it how it looks on an actual wall.
What you doing?
Let me see. Okay, you can see it kind of there, right? So there's a building, a wall, and there's this hole through which there you can see it in the side of the shop, right? And it used to be used to dispatch wine during the Black Pest in the 1600s, so that people didn't come in contact with each other. And they've revived them now because of coronavirus. And there's apparently in Florence alone, and there's some great pictures of a large number of them. You can see them there, right, by the door. And here's how they dispatch the drinks. You see how they dispatch the drinks there? Yeah. There's a good one as well. So yes, and here's a collection. Well, there's some cool ones. I'll put some in the PowerPoint. But anyway, these are here. You see, there's 180 in Florence alone, right? And they were kept. They were shut. They were not used, and now they're being used to dispatch drinks. And they've got a little bell. You put your hand through there, you ring the bell, and people know that you want a drink. Now, I searched for the name in Italian, which is Buschette del Vino. But if you search for a hole in the wall, what you get is something quite different. Let's do the meaning. I was doing semantics with the students, right? And what you get in the dictionary is an automatic cash dispenser installed in the outside wall of a bank, right? So if you look at the image of that, what you get is this, right? Well, that's something else, actually. I want to show you that in a minute. But this is, okay, let's look at a good picture of it. There. You see, that's what a hole in the wall is, a cache point, but that is in the wall rather than in the bank, right? You know that how we go to cache points, we go through doors and we are inside the bank, even if it's it's not, even if the bank is closed, right? But these are literally in the wall, right? And the thing that I didn't mention this morning is what a guy in India did. This is a project, an educational project. This guy, Sugata Mitra, he was here in Argentina a few years ago, and he explained how his project worked. He did basically what the same thing, the cache point project idea, but he did it the other way around. He put a computer there that kids could access and they could play around in, right? And he called it, his project was called a hole in the wall project, and the power of self-organized, what is it called? The power of self-organized learning. Okay. So he's got a TED talk, of course, and he explains what the hole in the wall project was like. Okay. Why did I start talking about this? Let me backtrack. Oh, the literacy thing. Okay. No, when I was talking about a hole in the wall, what we were saying is that the plural of that is two holes in the wall. Because even though it's a compound, it's pluralized as a phrase. You don't say two hole in the walls because it hasn't become a unit yet. Okay. Although you do say that for, I don't know, breakfast. You can say two breakfasts. Breakfast is a compound originally, right? It's to break fast, right? But we pluralize it as a compound because it has become nominalized. When we think of breakfast, we don't think of breaking fast anymore, right? We think of breakfast, the meal, and we pluralize it like that. Now, this is interesting in terms of what you were saying as well, Paula, that you were talking about another concept that's quite popular, which is that of digital natives and digital immigrants. Yeah. And the idea, how they're different, there's a zillion references to this because it's a very popular notion. And there's even, let me see if there's a picture of a baby. There's bound to be a picture of a baby somewhere. Well, there's a picture of a kid, Yeah, you can read it all about how sweetie, how was school today? You can read all about it on my blog, Dad, right? So the natives and the immigrants. And yes, the idea is that, as you said, Paula, it may be 1997, you said, 1999.
Yes.
But you were, beyond the critical period, if you like. You were a teenager, an adult? I don't know what you were at that time.
17.
Right. I was close. Teenager and close to being an adult, right? Yeah. So you have a lot of experience, but you didn't grow up with it. So you don't have that intuitive familiarity that digital natives have, which doesn't mean that they know everything by any means. Okay. Now, going back to the notion of digital literacy, of course, it's an expansion of the notion of literacy. Right. And the question is, what is literacy? Any answers? Any willing answers to what is literacy?
If you are literate,
okay.
Add something with me or in something. Add something, right? Like good at.
Well, traditionally, being literate was literate in an absolute sense. It wasn't literate in an activity. You're either literate or illiterate.
illiterate.
Right? That was and it was one of those adjectives that it's like pregnant or not pregnant. But you could say semi-literate, right? You could. Even in the olden days, right? Because it's a process and you're supposed to develop literacy. But it was only, go on with your idea.
No, because I was thinking that I don't remember the exact word now, but I've seen literacy with other words, like in different areas. So that's why I asked if you were
exactly. You're right, because those are expansions of that original notion of literacy. Okay, literacy had to do with being able to read and write. Read and write, right? But even being able to read and write is not as simple as we may think at first sight, right? Because, in fact, this in Spanish is called alfabetización. ¿Es alfabeto o es analfabeto? See? And it's got to do with a conception of communication in writing initially, right? Which has to do with decoding meaning, right? So turning some meaning into the written form or obtaining meaning from the written form, right? In a very traditional sense, this used to have to do with being able to, for example, convert the written text into oral text. Did any of you have to read out loud in school?
I don't remember.
I had, and I have them somewhere. I have my 3rd grade reading text, el libro de lectura. Tenía el libro de lectura seguro, le juro. Pregunten en sus casas.
Yes.
See? And my 3rd grade reading text has these long paragraphs of very complex text because it was literary language, right? And I remember the teacher going around and getting us to read out loud. Lectura en voz alta. Algunas de las caritas me hacen sentir que estoy hablando de la prehistoria, pero bueno, avanzo.
Es la prehistoria.
El siglo pasado seguro, pero no importa. Bueno, no importa, sigamos.
I don't remember.
Well, talk to your friends and
yeah.
We would read the text and we would read maybe a sentence or 2 sentences each. And then the teacher would move on to the next person. And the purpose was to put what we saw into speech and not stumble, right? Because the idea was that you shouldn't stumble. You shouldn't not be able to decode that written word and put it into speech. But what there was very little of, as I remember at least, was any kind of comprehension work on that. It was la lectura era leer en voz alta y poner el texto escrito en palabra oral. Poquito se hacía con eso. ¿Se entiende? Now, if we think about our classes in foreign language, we do a bit of that, maybe for pronunciation practice, right? But we do a lot more silent reading for comprehension, because the idea is that when we work comprehension, the text will typically be more complex than our students can manage in speech, but they should be able to understand the text as a whole, to use contextual clues. And it's like a different skill, right? It's a separate thing, okay? And also, another thing that has changed is that even in Spanish and even in early literacy, which is, the beginnings of literacy, there's a lot more work done of the kind we do in foreign language comprehension. So looking at the paratext, looking at the genre of the text, looking at the clues we get from the photograph that illustrates the text, understanding why this headline has been used for this text, why there's a line under the image that explains what the image is. All that is part of literacy. And it's part of the literacy we use in everyday life, if you think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to think of things that, for example, the digital natives can't do. Navigate a phone book.
Yeah.
I know it'd be hard to find one, but, you know, finding and the information and even understanding what a phone book is. You know, it's like showing them a cassette. They don't know what it is. They don't know what to do with it, right? Now, it's as remote to them as if I show you this. Okay, give me a sec, because this requires illustrations, and that's what matters. Now, if I show you that, you're like, what is that? Right? Those are the earliest records of writing. Okay, and they come from... Yeah,
I
go
was
on.
thinking of the Rosetta Stone.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
These are even older than the Rosetta Stone, because the Rosetta Stone has the peculiarity of being a translation.
Exactly. That's why I thought it was such a clever thing.
Exactly. It's smaller than you think. There you can kind of see it, but you don't really. Let's see one where. Okay. The clever thing about it is, and the helpful thing about it was that it's, well, this is a jigsaw puzzle. That's for your husband, Fernanda. That would be a nightmare. Black and white, tiny thingies. Anyway, the thing about it, let me see if I can show you. Well, it's very difficult to see here, but what you have, let me see if I can get a better picture. Okay, this is a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. It helped decode the writing system of the Egyptians, okay? Because the top bit is in hieroglyphics, and the bottom bits are in Greek, in two versions of Greek. Because Greek had been passed down and translated into Latin, and Latin had then been translated into other languages. This was a fundamental piece of historical artifact that helped historians and Egyptologists specifically decode the written language of the pharaohs, right? So this is why this artifact is so important and so central. It's in the British Museum, and it's a relatively small stone, and of course they want it returned, like all the other things they stole. Understandably, but you see, that's where it is currently. It's in the British Museum, and it's not that big. I mean, I remember imagining that it was something like a frieze, something, but it's not. Anyway, earlier even than that, we have these Mesopotamian records of something that we understand to be linguistic signs, right? And in fact, most of them are numerical. They record numbers, that they are accountants' texts, if you like, because they record numbers of crops and things related to food and to harvesting and the like, right? So, but that's as incomprehensible to us as the phone book would be to, many millennials, right? Because it's a type of text that is not accessible, and we don't even, unless we've studied it, we don't know what the point of it is. Okay, and you have to See here, for example, you've got a code that helps you, and it's Wikipedia, of course, but it links through this table the different signs and the different meanings. And you can see that they use very signs that associate concepts with a particular sign, right? Which is similar to what happens with Chinese characters, right? Whereas our languages, which are alphabetical, associate sounds with signs, right? So we have letters that kind of closely approximate sounds, okay? So anyway, backtracking a lot, and we were talking about literacy, and this idea that to be literate, we need to be able to make sense of and encode sense into a written text. Now, for example, one of the comments I made on one of the pieces I looked at, which don't feel that when I read or that I comment on these components, I'm kind of permanently moving the goalpost. I know it seems like that because in the first ones, I comment on certain things, and then when you resubmit, I comment on other things that I hadn't commented on the first ones. It's just so as to suggest further things that you can think of, further possibilities. One of the things I commented on was the possibility of using hyperlinks, for example, right? It's just an idea, right? But it's an idea that relates to making these pieces more contemporary in a sense, right? More you've for example adopted and used beautifully the layout of the Canva to present the material, and I love those that you produce. I mean, this had, in previous years nobody did that because they were not using these resources. But there are other things that maybe we can use and we can incorporate, or we can at least try them out and see if they're helpful, they're useful. And you can have hyperlinks within a text, or you can have them from the text to outside sources, and so on and so forth. So that's why I keep adding ideas that come up. Now, the very notion of a hyperlink is something that is part of digital literacy. Your parents, I'm guessing, are literate, and your grandparents were literate, right? In the sense of being able to read, I don't know, this text and decode the meaning in this text, right? Or in a book or whatever. Hyperlinks? I don't know. My grandmother never found out what hyperlinks were. And would have never been able to. Maybe I could have explained it to her, but she died before, at the end of last century. So the internet existed, Paula, yes, but she didn't have contact with it, so she didn't use hyperlinks. So the very notion that you can have, something highlighted in blue and underlined that will take you somewhere else if you want to obtain. And when do you use it? Do you click on every one of them? All these are literacy practices that we have incorporated over time. Do we click on the image, and what happens if we click on the image? And do we, when we have a little sign that shows a little loudspeaker and we click on it, what happens? All these are literacy practices that you have incorporated. Think of using a cell phone, right? I don't know if you've ever tried to explain how to use a cell phone to somebody who didn't use computers, right? It's the order in which these things are incorporated. I remember that the lady who works at home, and she got a cell phone, and she at first she was like, "Oh, I only use it to make calls." And I'm like, okay, but if you only use it to make calls, you're going to spend a lot of money and you may want to send messages, right? And so the notion of open the folder and go with the before the smartphones, go with the cursor to that folder and click on it to open it. That it's mind-blowing, and
Yeah.
to you it's obvious because you've been doing it for so long. But that very notion, you know, you're saying 1997. In 1992, I got my first computer in Cambridge, right? And I remember I went to the computer lab and I said, I need a computer. And they said, what kind of computer? A computer for an idiot. And they said, okay, buy a Mac. In those days, Microsoft didn't have Windows. That's how old I am. Okay. So Macs had Windows, right? And so I didn't even know how to turn it on. All right. So I took it home. It had a monitor separate from a CPU, separate from a keyboard. The monitor was this big. It had the back, and it was like this big television thing. Okay, so I set it all up, and you know, my then boyfriend, now husband, said to me, "Okay, well, now that it's on, imagine that that's your desktop, and those are your files and folders." I was looking at it, I'm like, that's a screen. And those are little squares in different colors. What do you mean, my desk? It really it took me a while to get around that idea. And the abstract notion that you open folders and they open and they, you know. Anyway, long ago. But it's very difficult to undo those paths and to unknow the things you know, and to put yourself in the shoes of people who don't know the things that you know. And this is fundamentally the job of teachers. We do that all the time. But with certain things we take for granted, it's very difficult. And these digital natives are particularly tricky because they kind of amaze us with their, you know, dexterity at doing certain things, but then they don't understand certain other things. Again, an anecdote, still last century, but towards the end of the century. I was working in a place and we had to hire a receptionist, right? And she had to do some computer work, of course, simple stuff, but and so we were interviewing her with this guy who was 20 years older than me. We both used computers, but none of us had learned to use computers in school, you know, because there were no computers in school when we were in school. And so this girl came in and she said, oh, yeah, I had computing in school. I'm like, oh, great, wonderful. That impressed us already. And then we showed her something that we'd learned to do. We showed her this simple kind of poster type thing that was made with word art, and that had those little, you know, stick figures and stuff. And we said to her, okay, so how would you make this? And she said, oh, I would use word art. I'm like, oh, wow. You know, we learned what word art was the day before or something. So, yeah. Very impressed with her. We hired her. She's very nice as a receptionist, very pleasant. But she had issues. What were the issues? For example, we all worked on a joint server, right? We shared all what would now be the shared folder on Drive that you were talking about. This was before Drive existed, before, okay. But we had a server where we all put documents because we all had to work together. And what would she do? She would name the files that she worked on. She was called Cecilia. So she would name them C23A because it was made by Cecilia on the 23rd and it was the first attempt. There was no logic to the way she named the files. So then she would forget and it would be impossible for us to find them. Right? Now, That's the kind of thing you don't learn in computing. You may, but it's a kind of thing that you learn in mathematics, if you like. The logic of how those things are structured and how they need to be used. Okay. So anyhow, these are anecdotes. But so again, back to digital literacy. It's a notion that has been expanded from the idea of literacy. And it was created well before this period we're living through now, but it's become much more relevant, right? And quite distinct. I see Paula making notes on a piece of paper with a pen and a pencil, which is a practice that we have acquired and that we developed and that we use because it's the way we find it helpful to remember things. And there's even been studies that show that we remember things better when we write by hand, right? But you'll agree that it's quite different to write by hand and to read handwriting than to type and to read typed language. There's, of course, things in common, right? The words are the same, but the decoding process is quite different. And the encoding process is quite different. So there are literacy practices, there are literacy processes, and there are all these elements to digital literacy that are not necessarily language. Okay, the notion that I mentioned of the hyperlink is language, and it isn't. The notion that the communication through emojis, for example, I was listening to a podcast about emojis, and it was very interesting because it was talking about how certain emojis reflect certain gestures, right? Right. Right? Those are gestures or feelings that we may experience. But then other emojis have acquired other meanings. The eggplant, for example. Anybody know what the eggplant is?
Yes.
Well, don't use it if you don't know, because it's rather rude. Okay, but look it up. It's a different kind of literacy. Okay, what are these meanings that are encoded? You have a referent, a thing that is a picture that you use to communicate with somebody else, and you're communicating a meaning that's not linguistic, but it's a meaning nevertheless, right? It may be translatable to language, of course, the smiley face or the sad face, the happy face, the laugh out loud or whatever, but it's not all linguistic, right? So, we have to, that's the field of studies of semiotics, but it connects with semantics and with language as well. Okay, so we have to be careful about that. Okay, so it's a very broad area. But what I want to concentrate on, and I just chose these 3 areas because there's 3 of you. If there were more, I'd choose 4 because there's more areas. But I want to do a little exercise, and I want to use this space that the BBC generated to explore these notions associated with digital literacy. And we've got fake news, which you've probably heard, digital footprints, and online gaming. You're probably familiar with them. Okay. Are there any particular interests of people? Do you want to explore? My idea is that you should go to the links where these are explained, and then you should come back and tell the rest what they're about and what you've learned. Maybe if you've learned something new about that particular topic that you didn't know about. Okay. So who wants to take which? Who wants to take fake news? Or do I just assign names? Sai. Okay, let's go in alphabetical order then. Okay, let's do Alana goes with fake news, Paula with digital footprint, and Jesus Christ, Fernanda. Oh, I've disrupted the. I've got to have this scene too. I've got to have my. I said Fernanda to you today earlier, and I call you.
No worries.
Yes.
I like online gaming. No worries.
Okay, good. Do you like being called Teresa? Because
I don't mind. I mean, it's at home we're used to that because my husband changes everybody's names.
Okay, well, that's another thing I have in common with him, not just the puzzles. Okay, cool. So the links or the sites that this takes you to are not very extended or long or anything. They're quite brief and summarized. You may not be able to see the videos, but you've got the transcripts. They're quite short. Maybe you can see the videos. I don't know, but you've got the video transcript. If not, okay. And if not, we can watch a little bit of the video later on. But just take a quick look. Let's take 15 minutes, go to the loo, get refreshment, whatever, and then come back and then tell us about the one that you got and what you think it's about. And of course, feel free to go beyond what you're looking at and look at something else if you find that insufficient or you want to explore the concept a little further. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. See you in a bit.
All right. See you.
Were you able to see the video, Aldana, or just read the text?
No, just read the text. It wasn't available.
Okay, this is a good exercise in different types of literacy because you will have got your information from the written text, and then we'll see what extra information is added by the audiovisual side of it. So we can work on the, because this is something again that is generationally marked. The younger generations are much more used to getting their information in audiovisual format, and they have trouble. My son has to read a story, and he was saying to us yesterday, it's really tough because it's pages of just text. And he's got these graphic novels where, there's pictures and bubbles and things. And of course, a page of just text is like really tough for them to navigate. And, we've read pages and pages and pages and pages and pages, but to them, it's totally alien. Anyway, so Aldana, would you like to tell us about fake news? Right. Tell us about fake news.
Yes, well, I read first the video transcript. Basically, gives a definition of what fake news is, which is false information that is distributed on purpose, right, for a political or commercial purpose. They are disguised as real. They spread quickly thanks to social media. And it says that many times it's very, very hard to tell a real story from a fake one, right? So the video provides tips for spotting fake news, how one can spot if something that they are reading is fake or not, right? One of the tips is who made it and why, right? And there are several purposes like money for clickbait. The clickbait is when they advertise a story as something, and then when you click on it, it's something entirely different, but they gain money, right, by the clicks.
Absolutely.
Then you have satirical purposes, right? For example, it quotes, not quotes, but it names the onion, right, which is very satirical. I think here we have, is it Barcelona? There's a magazine that is very satirical as well here. And
absolutely,
a couple of weeks ago, there was an issue. I remember when I was reading, as you know, I am on Twitter a lot, and a debate started because the Cosmo magazine, the real one, made an article on mansplaining. I don't know if you're familiar with mansplaining.
Oh, yeah.
And it was written by a man. So it was really funny. Like, okay, so a man is going to tell me what mansplaining is. So then
I think that's the spelling. Let me just check. But
yes,
mansplaining. Yeah, that is the spelling. Yes. The explanation of something by a man, typically to a woman, in a manner regarded as condescending or patronizing. Exactly. Right? Those adjectives are important. Condescending or patronizing.
And it's usually, maybe, I don't know, you're a professional in a certain area and the man is not, and they want to explain something to you about the subject that you're a professional. So that's the idea. So then a Twitter account that is a parody was created, like the Cosmo one, and they had to clarify that they were a parody because they started posting things like, como rechazo a la discriminación, hoy en la redacción nos pintamos la cara de afroamericanas. So people started complaining. They got a lot of clicks and a lot of controversy, and they had to explain that they were a parody account.
Well, that's basically what Jonathan Pye is also about. The issue of how difficult it's become to make humor out of these things, because sometimes people don't see the parody or the satirical nature of these topics. Who's made fake news famous? Who says fake news all the time?
That was what was he? Swedish? Where was he from?
No, don't think something so complicated. Something,
Oh,
a big
Trump is always
Trump,
speaking of.
Donald Trump. Right.
Yeah, he's
But
always
he's
about.
playing the kind of double bluff idea on fake news, because when he is presented with data, he says fake news, and then he kind of says everything is fake news, even things that are attested and things that he can be shown to have said. He just paints them as fake news, and therefore muddles the discussion in that way, right? So it's the use of fake news to cover up something that is not. It's to distort reality. But the problem with this is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to figure out what is fake and what is real in a very technical sense, because videos can be distorted, and you can't tell what is a distortion and what is a real truth. And also in the sense of the spread of the news story, because once it spreads and people take it as real, then it becomes real in a different sense, right?
Yeah.
Let me just quickly play the videos. I was saying to Aldana, she said you couldn't see them because of this access thing. I think you should be able to see it if I show it. But what I want you to pay attention to is that what we were saying at the beginning with Aldana. She read the text, and now you will see audiovisual input, which is what kids are used to, how kids are used to processing information. And let's try and see what the audio-visual, the visual side of it adds to what we just heard or what we just discussed. Can you hear it?
Yeah. Yep.
You've probably seen headlines claiming things like Meghan Markle is pretending to be pregnant,
or Barack Obama was born in Kenya.
These are examples of fake news.
Fake news is false information that's deliberately distributed, political usually or commercial purposes. It's often disguised as real news and can spread really quickly over social media platforms.
In recent years, people have been deceived by stories about cannibal killers, political candidates, and even terrorist attacks.
It's up to us to work together to stop things from getting out of hand.
But it can be hard to spot the false stories from the real ones. So here are top tips for spotting fake news.
Start by asking who made it and why. The first reason people might create fake news stories is money. People get paid to write fake news, and many sites make their money from advertising. So some are happy to post dishonest headlines to get more clicks. The second reason people might create fake news stories is to influence your opinion about someone or something. In an election, for example, one campaign might hire people to write fake stories about an opposing candidate to make them less popular. Another reason people might create fake news stories is for satirical sites like The Onion or The Daily Mash, who create stories to make us laugh. Generally, websites like this are upfront about stories being a joke, but taken out of context, you might miss that important detail. Tip 2. Check spelling and grammar. People creating fake news stories are often working very quickly or might be writing in a second language. Either way, a common red flag is sloppy spelling mistakes or poor grammar. Tip 3. Beware sensationalist language. Fake news stories often use emotional language and words related to sex, death, and anxiety at unusually high rates. If something sounds too spectacular to be true, it probably is. Tip 4. Who's quoted? Genuine news articles usually quote experts or people featured in a story, or include links to other sources, and they often include opposing points of view, but fake news stories tend to be very one-sided. If a post doesn't quote anyone, or if it only quotes questionable people, it could be fake. Tip 5. Check for other sources. When you research the claims in the story, do you find them reported by known, reputable news sources? For example, is the BBC talking about it? If the claim only seems to be coming from one source, or from dodgy sources, then you're right to be skeptical.
Algorithms, the computer program to determine what posts appear on your social media feed, usually prioritize
The more you like and
more
share
popular
news,
posts.
The more you like and share fake news, the more you expect these algorithms to turn up fake news on your feed, and the more likely others will see it too.
So remember, ask yourself who's written a story and why, mind the spelling, beware dramatic language, look for quotations, and always double check outrageous claims.
In short, don't believe something just because you've seen it on the internet.
Sorry.
cannot hear you.
Sorry. I tried to stop you from hearing me doing this, and then I just talk. Sorry. Very pedagogical in nature, I was saying, right? A lot of the decisions in the presentation have to do precisely with that. Any comments or any views on this? What do you think? Anything about the presentation that reinforces the idea, or that?
I thought it was quite similar to the one we had seen about the octopus. Even though in that one there were no problems with the language or anything of the sort, but still you needed to check the sources, you needed to check how believable everything was.
Absolutely. Content-wise, it's the same idea, right? It's the same underlying idea. What else? Somebody was going to speak.
No, I was remembering that a couple of months, especially at the beginning of the quarantine and the pandemic and everything, a lot of fake news started going around. And my father, I don't live with my father. My parents are divorced, but my father was, I think that from all of us, he was the most paranoid about the situation, but it was extreme. Right. So one day we were at my house and he sent us an audio about a doctor saying, I don't remember exactly, but it was like, I don't know, in 2 weeks it's going to be the peak of the pandemic and a lot of people is going to die. Please stay home. Please don't go out. But it was very anxiety inducing. Yes. Right. And supposedly this audio was from a woman who was a doctor at, I don't know, blah, blah, blah hospital, and a biologist, and I don't know. And it took me 2 minutes to go to Google, look for the doctor's name, and I saw a news article in which she had come out and say, no, that is not me. I didn't say that. I didn't send that audio. So I didn't say anything to him. I just copy the link and send it to him. And I was like, please look for what you hear. look for the sources. Check the sources. Because it's... And the same happened with now with all of the vaccine issue and everything. Like, and the problem with that is that you have actual doctors talking about that. And at least that's why I read and what I heard, like people who believe the vaccine is going to be, I don't know, it's going to kill people, or they have like these microchips that they're going to implant on your skin.
Oh, gosh.
And they actually believe them because these are real doctors who are talking. And then you tell them, okay, but why don't you check with the WHO organization, right? No, but they just...
Are part of the conspiracy.
Organized. Yeah, they're part of the conspiracy. I'm not going to believe them. So I think that the issue of fake news, maybe at the beginning of the pandemic, was more, you could control it more, like I did with my dad. But now with these conspiracy theories, it's more complicated. At least now, that's what I see.
And it will get increasingly complicated. But you know, it's critical thinking skills that need to be applied to anything. And these tips that are given, simple, aimed at students, and presented in a language that students will understand, and presented by young people that the viewers can identify identify with. That's another part, because you had first the presenters, then the presenters again, in the middle the animation, which provides a simple, clean presentation of the topic, but very visual. All the ideas in the animation were reinforced by images. The images were not just there to make it look pretty, but to convey the same message. So to reinforce the message, there's a campaigning outlook in this, but not campaigning in the sense of trying to get you to believe something, but trying to get you to evaluate things critically. Okay, so if you kind of follow those steps, and you are always on the lookout for things that may try to distort reality, the idea is that you'll get something approximating a better outcome. And the other thing that's interesting, what you say about doctors falling into the same trap, is that there's this perception that people who have attained a certain degree of education will automatically have these critical thinking skills. And what we're seeing is that it's not like that. And there seems to be something about personalities that are more prone to believing in these conspiracy theories than and it's not so much you can get somebody with a low level of education who will not believe in conspiracy theories because they just disregard them, and other people who have high levels of education and even who are in positions to educate others who jump on this bandwagon of the conspiracy theories, and you have to constantly battle against it, and that's why the role of teachers in this sense is so important. And that's why the role of language teachers is also important, helping students figure out what aspects of language is charged with the intent to persuade you of one thing or another. Okay, and making students aware of these things, even in English and in Spanish, because these are transferable skills. These tips are obviously transferable from one language to the other. And you may learn them in English, but you can transfer them to Spanish or to whatever other language that you deal with, right? Yeah, cool. What about what's the next one we have here? Digital footprint. It was Paula, right, who had digital footprint?
Yes.
What can you tell us about it?
Well, the definition the video or the script gives us is that is the stuff that people see when they look information about you on the internet. I mean, maybe we are not aware. I mean, I think this video is, well, to raise awareness about the fact that by sending a WhatsApp message, an email, I mean, it's not only posting things on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, just by sending a message, you have to be very careful because maybe you can erase it, but somebody has taken a screenshot or something. I mean, they already know. And they give, the video gives us two examples. One, it's very extreme, but then they speak about a teenager. She was going to celebrate her 16th birthday, and she decided to use this Facebook event, but she forgot to put it as a private event. So the event went viral. She lived in a very small town, and by the time she had to celebrate her birthday, 3,000 people had traveled to her home. There were arrests. I mean, everything went out of control. I mean, well, that's. I mean, the guys on the video, that they say that this is a very extreme example. Then they speak about a girl who was a teenager too, who was not happy with her job, and she just posted on Facebook or on one of the social media means. She just posted like her job was boring, and well, time went by, and she became mates with her co-workers, and she admitted them as friends in their social media. But eventually her boss found out about what she had said, and he considered that what she had done was like light criticism. Her co-workers were not very happy with that, and well, she eventually had to leave the job. But apart from that, for example, when you share the location you are in, when you're on holiday, maybe you are telling prospective burglars that your house is empty, or when you share your real-time location, I mean, they can find you and you can bump into people you would not be very happy to see. So it's complicated.
Sorry, again. The notion of digital footprint is, again, an extension, right? We start with the idea of a footprint, the marking that's left on the ground when we step. Before digital footprint, another notion that became quite extended was the notion of carbon footprint. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but carbon footprint is a notion that was very popular. It's to do with
the environment, right?
Environment.
That's the one with the environment.
Absolutely, and it's to do with what impact we have on the environment. And the idea is that you can offset your carbon footprint by doing good things to compensate for the bad things that you do, kind of thing. So you can, if you I don't know, if you have to travel to work by car, you can plant X number of trees that will compensate for that contamination. And theoretically, if everybody did this, then we could counter the generation of carbon dioxide that we all produce. And it was a very popular idea in the UK, particularly, right? So, you have all sorts of charts and ways of looking at carbon footprint and individual actions that have to do with carbon footprint. All right. Now, back to what Paula was saying and about the maps, the digital maps. This is something, I don't know if you're familiar with Snapchat. On Snapchat, teenagers can, well, I don't know, anybody, not just teenagers. You can see where your friends are.
Yeah.
On Snapchat, right? Within a few blocks of where you are, right? Which, the first time I saw it, it was my daughter showing me the friends that she has in Brazil and here and there. And she was so happy about it. And my first reaction was like, what? All these people know where you are because you're looking at it. It just brings chills down your spine. It's a Big Brother type of situation where all these unknown people know where you are, and it's an infringement on your freedom in a way, right? Because you're not aware of the fact that all these people know where you are, and why should they, right? And it's the lack of awareness of this kind of situation that is very disturbing and that people don't necessarily realize. Okay. Let me just quickly play the video that Paula has just related to us and see. Let's do the same exercise. Let's see what more information we gain from the audiovisual as compared to the text. Let's see. It's coming. There we go. Maybe it's coming. Okay, give it another go. Here we go.
Or is it the same?
You know how the things we post online can follow us around and affect us in real life? Well, we call the stuff that people see when they look us up a digital footprint. Something you post online without a second thought could have immediate consequences. Or it could come back to bite you years down the line. Take location sharing, for example.
Okay, it's going a bit slowly. We're obviously overloading the system. Let's see if...
If I'm telling the whole world I'm on holiday, then I'm telling potential burglars that my house is empty too. And if I'm sharing my location in real time, then I'm telling everyone where they can find me, including some people I might not be so keen to bump into. This is true events as well. Private. If I'm inviting people online, be invited anyone about making it. Let's look at a true story of someone who learned this the hard way.
A teenager in the Netherlands was planning her 16th birthday and wanted to have a few friends over to celebrate. She created a Facebook event for the party, but didn't make it private. And then she watched in horror as the event went viral. People she didn't even know were sharing the details, even creating websites and social media accounts to promote the party. In the end, around 3,000 people travelled to her small town for the party. It quickly spun out of control. Property was damaged and arrests were made.
It's an extreme example, but a good reminder that anyone might see what you post. Once it's online, it's out of your control. So keeping your location to yourself is a good start, but there's a bit more to minding your digital footprint. Whatever you say online reflects on you in real life, whether that be positive or negative. Let's look at another true story.
A teenager in Essex was unhappy with her job. She thought it was boring, so she decided to tell her friends about it with a short social media post.
Okay, coming back. It's coming back.
We have to wait till be back.
Okay, in the meantime, it's all
They got a little laugh out of it and she carried on. Over time, she became mates with people at work and added them as friends online. Eventually, her employer found out about the post. And even though it was fairly light criticism, people in her office were unhappy about it. And so her boss decided to let her go.
It's not just friends and followers who see what you post, so before you take your frustration online, consider what might happen if the people you're posting about see it. If you wouldn't be happy to say it to them in person, then best not to post it. And if you're worried about what others might find out about you if they look you up, then try checking on yourself. Search your name out, see what you find and where. You might be surprised at what pops up. The internet never forgets. Even on apps that automatically delete posts, it's always possible for someone to make a copy or a screenshot and share it around. And it's not just bosses who might look you up. What would a crush think if they saw they trashed an ex online? That would be a red flag if I saw it. So if you're willing to take the time to get the perfect selfie because you want to look good online, then you might want to put some thought into the words you're posting too, whether that's your opinion on music or fashion or what you think of someone at school. Once it's out there, you can't take it back.
Oops. So again, the tips summarized at the end as a reminder, right? Some of this leads you to think that maybe the best alternative is not to post anything, right? And that's the safest thing. And for this reason, many people have deleted some accounts that they had online. But remember what I think I mentioned at some point, if you don't have a social media profile, that also makes you suspect.
Yeah.
So you have to think about it. Like you think about, the clothes you wear when you're going to a certain place or when you're doing a certain thing. Well, the same thing applies to your digital persona. You have to think about it because it's part of who you are. Okay. What about gaming? What do we think about gaming, Fernanda?
Okay. The one about gaming was quite similar to the other ones. I did not get to watch the video, of course, but what they wanted to raise awareness of was the dangers, actually the potential dangers people might encounter by playing games online. And what they wanted was to connect. The idea basically is connecting the idea of gaming with gambling or becoming the target to buy, to purchase things beyond your means, which they said was one of the problems that actually manifested more frequently with teenagers. They said that one thing is that they are playing Minecraft or a game like that, or anything or something of the sort, which was harmless. But the problem is when they start purchasing things or gambling while they are playing, and that there is a very close connection between the two things. They mentioned that it was the RSE, the Relationships and Sex Education curriculum in the UK, wants that this should be part of the curriculum in order to warn students about these dangers. And they want them to become aware of the harmful content and the harmful contact they might get by gambling or gaming. They also focus on this idea that while they are gaming, they do not know many of the people they are gaming with. People use their alias. So I don't know if they said the thing of their alias, or I remember because I know what the kids do, but they use their alias and they don't know who the other person is. And how important it is. This was another thing that was mentioned about the RSE. The RSE had to do with reporting issues. So they want kids to become aware that once they detect any of these problems, they have to report them, and they have to know whom to report the issues to and how to do so. So both things were equally important. The other thing was, the idea of becoming discerning consumers and to avoid debt. Because they said that they were too naive, basically.
Absolutely.
That was mostly what was discussed over there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So there's this notion of the RSE, which in Spanish is ESI, basically, roughly speaking, the equivalent, right? So we know what ESI, what the acronym is used in Britain in this case. And you were focusing on the gambling side of gaming, but there's also another aspect which is not perhaps emphasized in this particular video, but it's the addictive side of gaming, right? And the how personalities may be more or less addictive and will hook on different things that they consume, and it may be, you know, alcohol or drugs or games or chocolate, right? Which may be more or less damaging, but it's to do with personality issues. The other thing that you hinted on and that you covered in that had to do with online grooming, right? Which is this situation where children are not necessarily familiar with who they are in contact with. Let me just play the video and then I'll go over some of these points quickly so that let's see if it works. Here we go again, trying it out and seeing what we can gain from the audiovisual component of this. It's thinking. Yeah, let's give it a minute, but here we go.
It's great fun gaming online, but as you probably already know, there are some dangers to be aware of, because there are some people who target online gamers, and particularly young people who they perceive as being vulnerable. We've got Pixel Riffs here, a YouTuber and online gamer, to tell us a bit more about the risks. So Pixel Riffs, you play online games for a living?
I do, yes. I started uploading videos in 2014, and obviously it's super fun, but these days it's also really social. You can play online with friends. Personally, I play a lot of Minecraft, and Minecraft is a game.
But it'll come. Yeah. Give it a minute.
That you can express yourself and share stuff that you've built with your friends. There are other games that you can play, of course. If you're not into Minecraft, you can play racing games, sports games, all kinds of stuff like that.
But there is a darker side to online gaming too, isn't there?
Unfortunately, yes. So that's why it's always a really good idea to know who you're gaming with and what their deal is.
And why is that? Why do we need to know that?
Because if you meet somebody online that you don't know, then you don't know what their intentions are. So potentially they could be pressuring you to, share inappropriate images of yourself. They could trick you out of money, or they could encourage you to do something illegal.
Well, that's really not okay.
No, it's not. So that's why I always recommend making sure you keep your personal information safe. You shouldn't give it out to anybody you meet online. One of the most important things, of course, is if somebody suggests online that you should meet up with them in real life, to step away from that and tell a parent or a trusted adult right away. You can talk to them about the blocking and reporting features that might be in the software. Sometimes you can set it up so the only people you're allowed to join an online game with are people you're already friends with in real life.
So keep an eye on the privacy settings and you should be okay?
Pretty much, yeah.
Great. I've also heard about a link between gaming and online gambling. Is that true?
There are obviously online games which look like traditional gambling, things like online poker and blackjack and those kind of things. But there are also online games which sell skins and other items for your player's character. And those are sold for money. But there are lottery websites that will resell rare items for really large amounts of money when the item itself is basically worthless.
So gamers are gambling with real money?
Basically, yes, and they're taking a loss every time.
Any other dangers you come across online?
Obviously, there are some places where you can log into public servers where you might see somebody doing something inappropriate or maybe writing an inappropriate message on a sign or a wall or something like that, at which point it's okay to step away and talk to somebody you trust about that. Talk to a parent, talk to a trusted adult, and make sure that you know about the blocking and reporting features that should be present.
Okay. If it's died a death, never mind. We basically get the idea, and we notice that what we're getting here is an expert's testimony, right? So this is why this person is consulted, again, in a very friendly, very relaxed context, in language that teenagers would find familiar and understandable, using it's all following the same format because it's within the same platform and within the same context to show us how these tips and different ways of accessing the information are present. Just a couple of things that were mentioned there that may be of interest to us. Let me just share this with you. Here. First of all, the notion of online grooming that we were talking about, and how there's a lot in the relationships and sex education curriculum that fall into that, and to warning kids about digital threats. Also, oh God, not now, close, whatever. The applications of gamification to e-learning, again, something that's exploded over the last few months, because the idea is that not only are we now interested in reaching kids where they are in terms of their habits and in terms of what they enjoy doing, and so we can think of ways in which games can be used to learn things. So this is a growing area. And also, this is a news story: lockdown and loaded, coronavirus triggers video game boosts. Yeah. I don't know what your experience is of gaming. I don't game, and I'm not interested in gaming, but I do have a teenager at home who has, become more of a gamer in this context. He never used to play online games, and we've kind of had to lift the restrictions because this is the way he socializes. And this is the way he talks to his friends, and this is there's a balance that you have to strike, and you have to prize him away from the computer at times to get him to do something else. But at the same time, how much can you restrict that which is also his main socializing space, right? So, yeah, I mean, we kind of need to know what these things are about, and we kind of I don't like that they're all about shooting and about, and he'll try to persuade me that they also build stuff. They don't just shoot stuff, but I'm kind of not very convinced. But, what else can we do about it? Anyway, comments. Oh, twitching. Do you know what twitching is all about? Who knows what twitching is all about?
Twitch is a social media platform that is used mostly by gamers who wants to stream their
Absolutely.
Twitch.
Having a Twitch was having a kind of condition, and now twitching is an activity. And it's exactly as Aldana was saying. Apparently, El Kun Agüero is on Twitch, and they broadcast their gaming, and people comment on it, and they follow their favorite gamers on Twitch, and twitching is an activity.
Yes, and if you have enough people, you can make a living out of that.
Yeah.
Because they donate money, they subscribe. So
Yes.
Like this guy in the interview. I don't know if you remember, I mentioned Yuval Noah Harari when we talked about Sapiens and 21 Lessons of the 21st Century and Homo Deus. I think particularly in Homo Deus, he refers to, the fact that because in the future there will be less of a need for people working, people have to do something. And one of the things that people may engage in is kind of entertainment that takes up their time, and if this idea of universal el IFE universal, digamos, the government provides universal income for everybody, right? So you have basic income that allows you not to work. What do you do with your time? Well, you game. Bit of a sad future if you think about it in terms of satisfaction. But then if you ask these kids, what would you like to do in the future? Well, I'd like to game, or the ideal. Just it's mind-boggling for us. But if you ask them, that's the ideal future. You get paid to survive and to have your basic needs covered. And you're online 24/7 gaming and chatting with your friends. I don't know. What do we think about that future? And what do we... I don't know. We're kind of doing it, but we are engaging with technology for a different purpose, theoretically, right? To expand our horizons rather than to narrow them. But to them, I don't know. Let's try on the argumentation side of things, because we looked at sources and we looked at digital literacy as a value. But maybe let's try and think for tomorrow about, again, something you need to think about, not necessarily look up anything, but arguments against this idea of universal gamification, if you like, or what this future world might be like, where people have enough income to live on, and therefore they can devote all their time to something, and that something may be gaming. I don't know. Do you think that's likely? Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? I mean, another side of that, which is not gamification as such, but it's the TikTok side of things, where people are constantly watching TikToks or uploading videos of themselves doing dance routines, and that it's not that different, right, from gamification. In the sense of doing something that we were brought up with this idea of productivity. You have to do something that's a contribution to society. Learn to build something, or learn to cure something, or but then if machines do those things for you, then what is there left for humans to do? I don't know. Engage in art, some might say, but then machines do that too. I don't know if you saw that article that that was published in The Guardian last week. I mentioned it, right? The machine-generated article. Guardian article? No, maybe I didn't. Where is it? The Guardian. No. Can machines be more creative than humans? No, this was last week. Scientists develop AI. No. Where is it? I think I posted it. Let me see. I'll just mention this, and let me just check. I think I posted it here. Did I? No, uses of literacy. It's not here. Oh, well, I'll post it there so you can actually find it. But it was an article, AI, Guardian article. Oh, here it is. A robot wrote this entire article. Are you scared yet, human? Okay. So this was an article that, and an editor edited it, and there's a note below about how he went about editing, and when you read it, it could have been written by a person. So does this worry us? Because what could be more creative? And there's all sorts of music and art, that's created by artificial intelligence, and people can't tell the difference. Okay, well, let's think about it for tomorrow and decide what we think about this. Okay, what the future holds for us, and we've got some things to discuss. Any comments, questions, observations on this? Just a big sigh. What are we going to do with our lives and the world? Anyway, don't want to depress you, but they are things worth thinking about. Okay, well, let's think about it and meet again tomorrow, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Cool, guys. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.